I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities of Music today. And our first two-part ever. We're doing two albums back-to-back. We just did in our previous review, what's the band
It's
called?
Frightening by White Rabbit.
It was quite frightening, actually, because we both liked it, which typically doesn't happen when we have two albums next to each other. White Rabbit's It's Frightening. This is White Rabbit's 2012 album, Milk Famous. Tom, as I said in the previous review, in case you didn't watch that, these guys are from Brooklyn in New York City. They have a very New York City-esque indie rock sound. These guys are definitely indie rock. There's elements of post-punk in their music, especially in the drums and the bass. And the bass plays a bigger role on Milk Famous than it did on It's Frightening. But what was your take on the overall general sound of Milk Famous, especially as in comparison to
because, you know, we do have a very interesting perspective reviewing these at the same time. I had to make sure I didn't listen to both of them right in a row. I tried to put albums between them.
Yeah, me too.
But it's funny because these guys went from us never listening to them ever to them being in our top 10 most listened to artists on Last FM. Just because reviewing these two albums at the same time, we listen to this band so much.
Right, so if you think we each put like 8 listens per album.
Probably, yeah.
That's a lot of listens.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. So this album, much sharper production. That's the first thing I noticed. I mean, I usually on further listens is when I really delve into the songwriting techniques and stuff that they're doing. But the first thing you always hear about an album is how it sounds. Right. Just the sound quality. And this album is much sharper, much cleaner sounding, almost to the point of sounding a little sterile. I think that this album, I think some of the energy, some of that really raw intensity that was on It's Frightening got killed a little bit here. I think a lot of the songwriting chops are kind of on par. As Jake mentioned, much larger bass roll, which I really liked. You still get a lot of those kind of disconnected intros and outros to songs, which really adds a lot of attitude to it. But with that new sound, it's like it's a little more focused. It's a little poppier, but the focus here, actually similarly to what I said about Plants and Animals' new album, the end of that, I feel like the focus actually didn't help them too much. Right. It actually ended up killing some of the things that really made their past work good. Now, I still like this album overall. I'd recommend it, but those were my complaints.
Right. And one thing that I did notice, I agree with you on your assessment of the production in general. That played a much larger role in this album.
Yeah, it did.
They changed, obviously they changed the format a little bit of how they were composing these. It's less aggressive. I think because the production kind of truncates some of the, it's so pristine and sterile that it truncates some of the edge. I think they even sound more like Spoon than what we described It's Frightening as. And that's not a good thing for a band that was already pushing the envelope there. But really, this album comes off, just doesn't grip me very much. It just, for whatever reason, I'm just blah, whatever. I don't get that a lot of just edge from this album, and I think part of the reason, and I'll come out and say this, is a difference between It's Frightening and Milk Famous is that the vocalist actually is going up into the upper register a little bit more. Not that gruffy voice that almost kind of grunge crossover that I heard on It's Frightening, but something much more kind of, well, milky and not quite as gritty as I want it to be. Yeah. And that's part and parcel with everything about this album. This album is so polished. It's like taking like this rough, coarse boulder and like feeling all the textures and going to like a polished little stone. That's the difference in sound to me. And quite honestly, I think it's a lot more fun to analyze, this really detailed boulder than this polished stone. That's just me, really crappy analogy, so I apologize. Hopefully you guys get where I'm coming from. But overall, this is just kind of a big yawner to me.
The move and sound really makes me think a lot of the Strokes' newest album, Angles, because that one was much sharper in the production. I mean, you look at, and they're both New York bands. I mean, you look at, the Strokes' first album, Is This It?, which is like the definition of kind of low production, just kind of classic New York rock with kind of that post-punk influence. And also a little bit of a classic rock influence. Well, now these guys are a little different, but the move that they make in style and just sound quality here is actually quite similar. Now, I like this better than the newer Strokes album. I think that they make it work a little better. But I think, if you've been keeping up with both bands, I think you'll see what I mean, that the direction is similar.
Right. Yeah, and personally, I think that, what criticism we had in the last album is that it could have been so much more. They could have they went the opposite direction here. This album is, I feel, more constrained and just kind of just out there. Here's 11 tracks. It's not much of an album, more of a compilation. And really they're oversighting or not citing their influences. I guess how would that work? I mean, they're mimicking Spoon in other bands so much that even the casual listener is going to find this, to be unoriginal and so safe that it's almost like, what's the point? Overall, I'm sitting at a 65.
I'm going 72.
So a little bit of a disagreement in score for us. Nothing wrong with that. Tom and I like to feel differently about albums from now and then.
It's refreshing.
Yeah, it is, because we listen to all the same stuff.
Yeah.
We talk about all of our thoughts, so it's natural for us to grow together over time.
Yeah.
So whenever we do kind of have differences in opinion, it feels good. It feels good.
Yes.
If you guys like that, let us know. www.velocitiesandmusic.com. Also, let us know which album you prefer, Milk Famous or It's Frightening. Two awesome white Rabbits albums to listen to and analyze. So let us know, www.velocitiesandmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. That's where the conversation happens. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.